John Nixon, out of the main, they call me the second-rate first mate. He calls me that.
I'm Tom Nixon. I am the brains behind Out of the Main.
Yeah.
Yacht Rock podcast. I was about 5 years into my current love affair with Yacht Rock, and John and I were talking one night all about it, and he was falling in love with Yacht Rock too, and it sounded like a somewhat interesting conversation between the two of us. We should turn on a microphone and record this.
Yep. Pretty simple. So yeah, we're barbecuing, having beers. You know, the idea would be like if people were hanging out at a bar, talking, well, sports, but in this case it would be music. If you just hung a mic over them and listened to them argue about who does what better, and to us that was interesting. The
first national act that we booked as a guest was
Firefall. Yeah, Firefall. Jack Bartley, Mark Andes.
So their big hits in the genre, so to speak, would be what are the big ones?
Strange Way, You're the Only Woman. I know your favorite is Mexico.
Just Remember I Love You.
Just Remember I Love You. Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of on the strummy, softer side of yacht rock as opposed to the more deeper central cut. But there are a lot of people that play yacht rock will also filter in other artists that maybe work around the tangent of it. So sometimes you'll hear things like Firefall or England Dan, John Ford Coley. Some will even go so far as to put the Eagles in. But if you really know about yacht rock, you'll know that's your fatal flaw.
Yes. I would say the most memorable moment for me was not even happened during the podcast. It was actually the email I got from the author, the writer that Kenny Loggins collaborated with to write his autobiography, and said, I think I could get Kenny on your show. And he had used our podcast as research for writing some of Kenny Loggins' book, at least the yacht rock part of it. Mm-hmm. So that's an email that I want to get bronzed and hung on the wall, because that was just a thrill to get that email. And then, of course, when we spoke with Kenny, he couldn't have been a nicer guy. Just super down to earth.
Yeah.
Talk about being buddies at a bar. I mean, right away he sits down in the chair and starts making fun of us. I'm like, well,
yeah, this is comfortable.
He's one of us. The podcasters like to speak of their white whales. The prize get, right? And so there's probably 4 to 6 people on that list. Kenny Loggins was certainly one of them. Yeah. Michael McDonald, Christopher Cross, we're still waiting to hear back from. But he was one of the main people that I ever thought if we could get on the podcast, it'd have to be him. But we've had some others as well.
Yeah, we've talked to guys from Ambrosia. We've talked to Tristan Bowden a few times, who's one of the legendary drummers of the era. We've talked to Mark Jordan, who is a behind-the-scenes songwriter. You know so many of his songs, legendary songwriter. But, we also do stuff other than interviews. What's really fun is that it's a mix of interviews. Sometimes it is, we'll take a specific part of the yacht rock canon, something, for example, known as the Doobie Bounce, and break it down. Or we did a thing all about the Rhodes piano, because the Rhodes is an essential sound of yacht rock, and we went through what makes a Rhodes, how was it used, what were its other competitors around the time. So we get into these niches, and then we do the occasional tomfoolery episode that we call, we do a game show or something light. So it's a mix of all kinds of different ideas.
Every March we do a tournament in honor of March. Can I say March Madness? It will, for example, this last year we pitted 64 Steely Dan songs against each other in a bracket type of tournament like the NCAA basketball tournament. So that's fun. And we had people come on and be the arbiters. Our guests get to decide who wins each matchup. So that takes up the month of March. So we try to mix it up.
Next year's the Total Invitational Tournament, we think.
Yes, it is. Yeah. One thing that you got to understand about yacht rock that we even had to learn early on is there is a very set, defined definition for what yacht rock truly is. And if you're not a follower of yacht rock, you probably don't have it right. And even we didn't exactly have it right. We thought it was the soft rock, easy listening music from the late 70s and early 80s. And some of it is that, but you come to find out that there was somebody who actually coined the term. J.D. Riznar put a movie, a series, kind of like a web series called Yacht Rock. That's where the name came from. It's been this journey where we thought we knew what yacht rock was and we wanted to know more about it. Then we fully understood it. Now we're at a point where we're sort of like drifting a little bit out of the harbor because we don't want to be so pigeonholed into, you can only talk about what J.D. Riznar has deemed to be yacht rock.
Yes, it's very specific.
Right. And that totally get that, and that's we wouldn't have the term yacht rock if it weren't for him. So, but it's music that is what we love. We appreciate the music. So if there's an artist, say Eagles, that aren't considered part of the yacht rock canon, that really doesn't matter to us because we could do a whole episode on the Hotel California album, for example. And we will. So
Don Henley, call us, man.
Yeah, don't sue us.
No,
call us and come on the show.
Yeah.
We interviewed Bill
right.
Champlin. Probably most people know him as one of the lead singers of Chicago for a time. But he had a huge career before that, both as a solo artist and as what they call a session vocalist, where he would come in and do the background vocals. And he's had a long career after that. So he and his wife were performing a concert with a yacht rock tribute band about 4 hours away from us. So we got in our car. We hooked up. One of his associates hooked us up with an interview. We sat down in person with him. And that was a thrill because, remember, we started this whole thing during COVID. So we couldn't have done that, even if we wanted to. But now we get those opportunities. We'll take them all day long.
The yacht rock primarily was a West Coast LA phenomenon. So a lot of those guys are still out there. So that makes that a little bit difficult for us. Mark Jordan, he's up in Toronto. So there isn't a whole lot. It's a big do to travel, but yeah, Bill made it worth our while. I think that was a 3-part episode. So
it was, yeah.
We talked. Oh, there was a lot of great off-camera stuff too. Yeah. Wasn't fit for the presses. Let's put it that way.
But going back to or drifting out of the harbor, I'd love to get Bob Seger, and I would sit down with Bob Seger for as long as he'd be willing to do so. Maybe one of the most interesting people we've ever interviewed is a guy by the name of Jay Graydon, who is a legend in yacht rock. He was a producer, guitar soloist, this multi-talented. The interesting thing, first of all, is that he's nocturnal, and I mean that literally. So we had to find a time that worked for him in California that was in the middle of the night for him. And it had to be, I think it was 7 in the morning here. So is that what it was? Because it was 4 in the morning his time?
Yes, he goes to bed at 6. He goes to bed at 6 a.m. his time in LA, so we had to figure out how to work that.
So he's got a beer open, he's smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, and for us it's 7 a.m.
Yeah. And
so I had to wait an hour for my next beer, right?
Yeah, he wanted to talk to us for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So he's the most interesting, brilliant, technical, savant person you'd ever want to meet, and he was just, it's hard to keep up.
It's amazing how many of these musicians are science geeks too, because that goes back to Skunk Baxter when we talked to him. He has been for 30 years advising the U.S. government on missile defense. In fact, he helped design the original missile defense concept that we've been using since the 80s. So here he is, long hair, mustache, ripping guitar for the Doobie Brothers, and at the same time he's going to meet with Congress and the Joint Chiefs and giving them advice on missile defense from a scientific standpoint. It's amazing, these guys. And we're still reaching out to a lot of different artists, and occasionally they reach out to us if they've got something new happening. They know how to find us. They look up Yacht Rock podcasts, and we generally come up. So a lot of our episodes have come from them reaching out to us and saying, hey, we've got so-and-so, it's got an album coming. We recently talked to Jeff Baxter, also known as Skunk Baxter, guitar player for Steely Dan, and then legendarily spent some years with the Doobie Brothers. So we just talked to him. That's a 2-parter because we talked for so long. So guys like that, they come out, they got a new album coming out, they want to promote it, they come to us.
Yeah, it's crazy. When we came up with the idea, I was like, all right, this is interesting to us. Is anyone going to listen to this? And more than 25% of our listening audience is outside of the U.S.
Our biggest fans in Singapore. Come on.
So we get Singapore, we get UK, France, Germany, just places that I didn't even know could even understand the English language, let alone a couple of luckheads talking about yacht rock, but there you go. So
yeah, they probably complain about our accent. And we also have a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is for those artists that we do talk to on Zoom, and they, if they allow, we put together the video from the Zoom, and if they approve what they see, then that goes up on the YouTube channel, and that is raw. That's almost like seeing behind the scenes.
Yep. No post-production.
No post-production is done to that, and you kind of see, if we mention, such and such a song, we'll say, yes, we're going to drop that in later. So you're almost seeing behind the scenes of how a podcast is made at the same time as getting able to see the interview.
So if people want to see any of these past episodes.
They're brilliant too. So,
Well, my part is go to outofthemain.com.
Yep.
Everyone's there, including some of the videos. So the entire library is at outofthemain.com, and people can follow along on Facebook. The interesting thing about Facebook is now these musicians, these legends, our heroes, are now getting active in these Facebook groups, and they're like commenting on things that we do. I just put a video of my daughter singing at a recital, and Vernon Porter, a bass player, is commenting on it. I'm like, Jesus, I feel like I know these guys.
like we know these guys now. I know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Rock out.
Yeah, rock and
Oh, wait,
roll.
wait. Ahoy polloi.